Hello, my name's Patrick Smith. I'm the Director of the Institute for Applied Leadership, INSTAL, here at Bucks New University. I'm always a bit wary about vision statements. I'm a bit suspicious, indeed even sceptical about them. But I'm very pleased with the vision statement that we've developed here. We have suggested that what we're involved in is developing the capability to manage, to lead and to learn. The notion of capability has been around for a long time, developed by John Stevenson in the early 1990s, and it's one which we found particularly attractive. Capability, in this case, refers to that blend of knowledge and skills which can be used to create practical, workable, viable solutions to issues and problems. It also implies that people are prepared to work individually or collaboratively in teams, and are able to switch roles and have the confidence in themselves to go with an idea, in fact, to go with it maybe just beyond where one would naturally feel happy and competent. One of the things that strikes me about management and leadership issues, as I've witnessed them both in the public and private sector in the last 20 years or so, is that a lot of us have to switch roles constantly. Sometimes we're managing, then half an hour later we're leading. Then we have to duck back from leading and go back into managing a role or taking direction. So I see these two concepts of management and leadership interacting and requiring us as individuals, if we're going to be effective, to switch roles. As we gain experience in organisations, so we develop the ability better to handle vast amounts of information. We chunk information together. We develop tactics and strategies for managing it as efficiently as possible, and that's excellent. It's inevitable. And people who are very good at this appear to be almost intuitive. They seem to be able to spot patterns, draw on former experiences in order to inform what they're faced with at the moment. That is all excellent. However, there's a downside to it. In so doing, people begin to develop behaviours which are unconscious, which are habitual. And that very habit, that very unconsciousness means that they cease to become aware of how they do what they do. This is a point I'll return to in a few minutes. So we're concerned in INSTAL with creating situations in which people can become aware of how they manage, how they lead, and I would say central to all that is the notion of learning. Learning is concerned with the conscious building of knowledge. It's the creation and the extension of what we know. As I said earlier on, I've been involved in what might be termed professional development, professional education for some 20 years, both within the private sector and the public sector. And there are many, many models academics have developed over the years to explain how professionals learn, how they develop. What I'm illustrating here is a relatively simple three-stage model, which is born out of my observations over the years with acknowledgements to all the great and the good people who have developed very sophisticated models to explain how professionals learn. As I say, this has come about because essentially I'm a practitioner. I'm not a theorist to any extent. I use theory only to the extent that it will inform and illuminate an issue, a problem, something which we need to work on and develop. One of the things that struck me in working with people from a range of backgrounds in these situations, in workshops, in conferences and things over the last 20 years, is that the greater the diversity you have in a group, if you, as the facilitator, can create the conditions in which people talk to each other, then the greater the potential synergies, the greater the learning. And actually, the facilitator's role is made much simpler because a lot of the learning goes on when people start to talk to other people, not necessarily from the same background, but often from very different backgrounds. So the first stage of this three-stage model is what I've called accessing and realizing. Adults with experience in most fields enter the workshop, the classroom, the boardroom with huge amounts of experience and expertise. If that can be tapped into, then half the game of creating learning, creating effective solutions has been completed. I use the analogy of the archaeological process. We all have theories. I know it's fashionable to think that we so-called academics are just theory-driven and that people in the real world don't have theories. I think that's nonsense, frankly. We all have, if you take theories to mean sets of ideas and approaches by which we try to generate insight into situations and problems, that's a theory. One of the problems is that because we are always solving problems, because it's habitual and unconscious, we're not aware of those theories that we use. So part of the process in accessing and realizing this first stage is to get people to realize the theories that they're working from, to get them to realize those theories that they use, to get them to realize those theories that others use, and to begin to discuss the similarities and differences in order better to see that one theory doesn't fit all, that actually theories do evolve, they're organic. So the first stage, it's like an archaeological site, really. One sees an artifact in the ground and gradually one unearths it, one scrapes away and looks at this theory which is emergent, my theory. I exchange it with my colleague. We begin to see similarities and differences. The second stage of this process is refining and focusing. It's all right generating understanding of how I work, how he works or she works, but it's got to be to some purpose. And the discussion process with others is where we begin to appreciate where the shortcomings are with the way we view things, with what we do. And we also need at that stage to try out these ideas, to focus them on a real issue. So very much here, it's about learning how others see things and integrating that into one's repertoire of behaviours and actions. And it's also about the learning from the theory which is extant, which the facilitator can introduce and say, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Here's so-and-so's approach, try this for size. Which leads us into the third stage, which is applying and adapting it. One of the concepts which I find very interesting is the psychological concept of metacognition. Metacognition is the process whereby while I'm doing something, I'm monitoring how effective that strategy is. I may be tweaking it, I may be amending it, I may in some circumstances be wholly changing it. That's metacognition, and it strikes me that that ability is one which people, to be effective in work, have to develop. They have to develop a critical awareness of, why am I doing this now? What effect is it having? Could I be doing it better? So applying, adapting is about monitoring what we do. And that gets back to where I was talking about the habitual and unconscious behaviours. There was a stunning piece of research done in the early 80s in the States, which has been replicated in many places since then, studying how experts operate. And frequently experts do not know how they know what they know. They do not know why they do what they do. Now, if you think about that for a moment, that has quite profound implications. It's this business of the pressures making us operate so quickly that we become unaware of how we manage, how we negotiate meanings. I think the learning, as I said at the beginning, is central to what we're doing in INSTAL. I think learning is about trying to remain, for as long as possible, as conscious as possible of what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we interpret what others are doing. And finally, what's different about INSTAL? What silver bullet do we have? Well, we don't have a silver bullet. We don't have a unique selling point. I think we have a number of significant contributions to make to people. I think our solutions are always going to be customised, they're going to be negotiated, they're going to be, if you like the rather fashionable modern phrase, co-created, co-designed by the people involved. So they're customised and appropriate. They're active. Secondly, we use active, people-centred approaches. Facilitation is not about me telling you this bunch of theories. It's about creating circumstances where the facilitator can feed in information, feed in questions, feed in activities. So very much our approaches are person-centred, they're very active, and they draw people in. And finally, we're concerned with learning. We're concerned with converting experience into knowledge. Knowledge which can be used to solve problems, to make organisations, individuals, departments more effective and engaged. If you want to know more about INSTAL, we're very happy to respond. There's a website address and there are email contacts there. We'd be happy to come and talk to you about any issues that you may think are worth pursuing. Thank you.